Well, here's a very stern statue of the poet Dante here in Florence. But this is actually an introduction to a journey of the spirit, and this time into the spirit of love and that extraordinary story of Dante and Beatrice. Well, we all know about it, but where did it happen and what was the place like? And these were things I simply didn't know, and there I was lost in the back streets of Florence, walking down a small alley, a small street with shops and houses, and on the left a simple door in one of the walls, nothing to distinguish this or anything. And yet little did I know that this, in fact, was a door to a small medieval church, near where Dante lived, and indeed where Beatrice is buried, and where they met. A doorway into another world, back 700 years into the times and place of their legendary love affair. Now, it is known to us all across the world, isn't it? And it is one of the most extraordinary and moving love stories of all, that of Dante and Beatrice. And here on the right is the earliest known portrait of Dante himself, painted by the famous artist Giotto, who would have known him. And as you can see, this portrait is a little bit softer than the one we've seen in the statue. Now, with Dante and Beatrice, they might well have only met a few times. And in fact, they were betrothed and married other people. But Dante was, as he said, totally smitten at first sight, and he carried his love for Beatrice throughout his life. And this love caused him to write some of the most beautiful and indeed tragic love poetry. And Beatrice also became his muse for his magnum opus, the Divine Comedy, and appeared in it as one of his guides. Now I say tragic because Beatrice sadly died very young at 24. But her image and story have circled the world, and they're still inspiring poetry and art and the hearts of young lovers everywhere today. Now, talk about inspiring artists. This is a picture by J.W. Waterhouse in 1915, and this is part of a poem by Dante that I've just chosen to illustrate it and highlight his idea of the spirit of love. I felt a spirit of love begin to stir within my heart, long time unfelt till then, and saw love coming towards me fair and fain, that I scarce knew him for his joyful cheer, saying, "Be now indeed my worshipper." And here in this beautiful painting there is Dante on the right, almost a worshipper, you might say, to Beatrice walking past on the left. And so, to continue the story, back outside Chiesa di Dante, and remembering that although Dante lived here and met Beatrice in this district, in fact later he was exiled from Florence and died elsewhere. And so I imagined him thinking back to these times and to these streets and places and meetings with this poetry that he wrote. Remembrance, which unpitying turns the view backward to times that are for ever gone, on one hand carries war into my heart, on the other hand the fond desire which draws my thoughts to the sweet country I have left. And just down the small street is a house called Casa di Dante. Now, he didn't, in fact, live there, but it kind of resembles the kind of house that he might have lived in those times. And near it is a bust of Dante, and here I imagined him writing his poetry and sending his songs to his beloved Beatrice. Song, 'tis my will that thou do seek out love, and go with him where my dear lady is, that so my cause, the which thy harmonies do plead, his better speech may clearly prove. And then into Chiesa di Dante itself, a beautiful but very simple church, medieval church, quiet, there's not many visitors, and it brings you into contact with those times and that place in which Dante and Beatrice lived. Beyond the sphere which spreads to widest space, now soars the sigh that my heart sends above, a new perception born of grieving love guideth it upward the untrodden ways. Now, in this small church are in fact some modern paintings that depict the meetings of Dante and Beatrice. Not great works of art, but they give a sense of what the times and the costumes were like in those days. And of course they can be seen standing outside the little church as it is today. And to these paintings I have put some of Dante's most well-known poems. A gentle train of ladies met my view this All Saints' feast that has but just passed by, and one advanced before them as their chief, leading with her upon the right hand Love. And here's another meeting. My lady looks so gentle and so pure when yielding salutation by the way, that the tongue trembles and has naught to say, and the eyes which fain would see may not endure. And this depicts the wedding of Beatrice to her betrothed, and on the right hand Dante walks away, thoughtful, pensive, and sad. My lady carries love within her eyes. All that she looks on is made pleasanter. Upon her path men turn to gaze at her. He whom she greeteth feels his heart to rise. But then, of course, into his poetry, into his love affair came tragedy, as Beatrice died so young. And in this church too there are some tombs. Here one of Monna Tessa, who was Beatrice's nurse. And Dante's poetry changed in the context of this. Into thy hands, sweet lady of my soul, the spirit that is dying I commend, and which departs so sorrowful that love views it with pity while dismissing it. And here then is the tomb of Beatrice herself. And even today this is popular with lovers, because the story is that they come here if they have something they wish to ask for or to seek, and they leave it written on pieces of paper which are placed in this basket here. Upon a day came sorrow into me, saying, I've come to stay with thee a while. And I perceived that she had ushered bile and pain into my house for company. And here is the monument to Dante in Santa Croce in Florence, the church where initially we saw the statue outside. And he's not buried here, he's buried elsewhere, so this is a kind of cenotaph or monument to him. And the latter part of his life, when he was writing the Divine Comedy, Beatrice reappears as a very important character and guide for him as he proceeds. And here's a small section from one of the cantos. So, from before mine eyes, did Beatrice chase every mote with radiance of her own, that cast its light 1,000 miles and more. And it is indeed the case, isn't it, that this wonderful, extraordinary story of the love of Dante and Beatrice does cast its light 1,000 miles and more, and indeed around the world today. And just to finish, some examples of the art that drew its inspiration from this extraordinary story, and here is a painting of Dante's Dream by Dante Gabriel Rossetti, and who else could there be but to paint this kind of picture from the era of the Pre-Raphaelites, of course, in 1865. A beautiful picture. And here's another lovely picture from Henry Holiday in 1883, again the Pre-Raphaelite era, and there's Dante meeting Beatrice, it seems, in Florence on the river where they lived. And here we now end this story of love of Dante and Beatrice with a lovely picture of Beatrice by Marie Stillman in 1895. And this is a story that for me, of course, occurred when I happened purely by chance upon this beautiful little medieval church near where Dante lived and where Beatrice is buried and where Dante and Beatrice met and where their magical and extraordinary love story and the spirit of love occurred.